Nitya Gaura Premanandi, Haribo, Hare Krishna. Oh, glories to some devotees. Oh,
Hare
glories to
Krishna.
some devotees. Oh, glories to some devotees. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to read on Bhagavatam and share whatever little realizations I may have. So I'll just share my screen, and it should. Oh, what happened there? What can you see? Can you see Srimad Bhagavatam
Yes,
3.4?
Prabhu.
Yes,
Okay,
Prabhu.
great. I've got a few things on my screen this morning, so make sure the right things there. Okay, so I just repeat myself as far as I understand. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, so I'll just read myself and then others can repeat afterwards as far as I understand. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 22. Tasyevam Ramanasya Satvatsara Ganan Bohun Grihamedishu Yogeshu Viraga Samajayata. I just repeat it once, so
3 times, Prabhu.
3 times, okay. Tasyevam Ramananasya Satvatsada Ganan Bohun Grihamedeshu Yogeshu Viraga Samajayata. Tasyevam Ramananasya Samvatsara Ganan Bohun Grihamedeshu Yogeshu Viraga Samajayata. Someone else like to repeat that? Any of
Tasyaivam Ramananyasya Samvatarsha Ganan Bahun Grihamedeshu Yogeshu Viraga Samajayata.
Anybody else?
Tasyaivam Ramamanasya Samvatsara Ganan Bahun Grihamedeshu Yogeshu Viraga Samajayata. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, I'll read the word for word.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I want to.
Hare Krishna. Yes, please, ma'am.
Tasyevam Ramamanasya Samvatsar Grahan Bahun Grahamedesu Yogeshu Viraga Samajayata. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody else?
Tasmaibham Ramamam Eshu
Tasyev.
Samvatsara Ganam Bahun Griha Medeshu Yogeshu Viragaha Shamayataha. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. I read the word for word. I just read it, I guess. And Tasya, his, Evam, thus, Ramamanasya, enjoying, Samvatsara, years, Ganan, many, Bahun, Bahun, great many, Grihamedeshu, in household life, Yogeshu, in sex life, Viraga, Viraga, detachment, Samajayata, awakened. Okay, the translation reads as follows: the Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, but at last his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested. Purple. Even though the Lord is never attached to any kind of material sex life, as the universal teacher, he remained a householder for many, many years, just to teach others how one should live in householder life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word samachayata means fully exhibited. In all his activities while present on the earth, the Lord exhibited detachment. This was fully displayed when he wanted to teach by example that one should not remain attached to household life for all the days of one's life. One should naturally develop detachment as a matter of course. The Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates, the transcendental cowherd damsels. But the Lord desired to end his so-called attachment to the three modes of material nature. He can never be detached from the service of his transcendental associates like Rukmini and other goddesses of fortune, as described in the Brahma Samhita 520 line 29. Lakshmi Shahashashata Sambrahma Sevimanam, in purple. Om Gyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshum Militam Dhyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'd like to read the verse again. Tashevam Brahmana Nasya Samvatsara Kananbuhun Kriha Medishu Yogeshu Viviraga Samajayata. The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, but at last his detachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifest. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhuttade Shmati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satarine Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Very well. So the conception of God is quite bewildering for many people. The concept of what he is, how he is, or even if he exists, and how he exists, and also his different energies. Within all theistic traditions, there's many different understandings, or we could say, if we want to say, different speculations and understandings about God. These are the theistic traditions. Yeah. And then we have the atheist type persons who, for them, God just does not exist. But it's interesting that the atheists, one of their favorite subjects is the subject of God. They have quite an interest. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to put across here is that God is inconceivable, actually. Atasi Krishna namadi napavetkriham indriyai sivanmukhi jivados swayam eva spurati hatha. So he's inconceivable to our material senses, and only to those who are engaged in loving devotional service is the Lord feel inclined to reveal himself. Other than that, the Lord is a great mystery. It's also mentioned in the teachings of Queen Kunti in her prayers to the Lord. She mentions that the Lord, he seems to act like an ordinary person. In that sense, he's a great mystery. He is beyond birth, but he seems to take birth. We have this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Janma Kama Chame Divyam. Yeah. Janma Kama Chame Divyam Evam Yovati Takvataha Trakvadeham Puna Janma Naitimam at the Sojuna. So there it's mentioned that one who understands the tattva of Krishna's so-called janma and so-called karma. Yeah, one who understands the actual truth through revelation, vitaraga bhaya krodha, by controlling the senses and engaging in devotional service, then the Lord reveals himself. But Queen Kunti, she brings out this point that he seems to be like an ordinary human being. Yeah? He seems to be, it's said that the Lord is samaham sarvabhuteshu, the dveshu shtina priyaha. It's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, I think in the 9th chapter, that the Lord, he is completely neutral. But there again, he seems to show affection for his devotees. And this is also brought up in the 7th canto. And then a whole story of Prahlad Maharaj and Lord Nrsimhadev and Hiranyakashipu is then spoken. Yeah. So the Lord, he is unborn. There is no, he is not subject to time, but he appears in this world. Yeah. And he is, he is Samahamsa, he is equally disposed towards everyone. But at the same time, he is inclined to his devotees. Yeah. And here he seems to be acting like an attached householder. The word used here is, there's these two terms, there's grihasta and there's grihamedi. So here the law's being described in the context of grihamedi, which means where sense gratification is the focus of one's household life rather than grihasta or grihasta. Yeah. Where Krishna is the center of one's household life. And then from that, there will be a natural detachment. But having said that, the word of Griha Medi Shu, actually the Lord here is there. So these pastimes are being recited by Uddhava to Vidura. Uddhava was giving a summary of the Lord's pastimes. Vidura inquired from Uddhava, and as we remember at the beginning of this chapter, Uddhava, being a great devotee of the Lord, described even from when he was a young boy, he would be absorbed in serving the Lord in different ways in his childhood play. And even when his mother would call him for lunch, then he would not come. So Uddhava is a great devotee, and Vidura is inquiring from Uddhava. And then very nicely described how Uddhava, just by hearing the question, then he goes into a trance of ecstasy. And that trance is the remembrance of the Lord and his pastimes. And then gradually he describes, then he comes back to the material plane and he begins to describe the pastimes of the Lord in a summary. Now, a more elaborate description will be given in the 10th canto. But here, the Lord, he is setting, here he is living, or he's setting the example as described here. He's the universal teacher. So it seems like he's very much attached from the uneducated, or for someone who's, for the uneducated, it seems like he's very much attached in a sense that he doesn't just have one wife, he has 16,000 wives. That's pretty amazing. 16,000 wives, and as we know, each of those wives had a separate palace. So it seems like he, from the uneducated point of view, you could say he's quite a materialist. He has many wives. And not only that, we could further, he has billions of girlfriends. Yeah. But at the same time, he is completely detached. It's described that the wives of Krishna in Dwarka, they were very much, it seemed like they were controlling Krishna. by their, by their glances and by their behavior, Krishna was acting. I think it's even described in one place early on in this chapter. In a purple, it's described that Krishna seemed to be a henpecked husband, as if he was controlled. But he is the complete controller. So he was not, he's completely detached. But still, and as the universal teacher, he is showing, and he shows how to live. Actually, although the term is grihamedishu, he actually showing how to live as a grihasta, and he did that perfectly. And this was seen by there's a wonderful chapter in the 10th canto by Narada Muni, who he visits Dwarka, and he wants to, in amazement, he's in awe and amazement at Krishna's potencies, and he understands that Krishna has married 16,000 queens, 16,108 to be exact. So Narada Muni wants to go and see this. So it's described how he visits the different palaces, and Krishna is engaged in different activities in each of the palaces. If I remember some of them, one of them, he's playing with his children. He's fondly playing with his children. Another one, he's speaking with his ministers. Another one, he's relaxing with his wives. In another one, he is feeding the brahmanas. In another one, he is hearing recital of the Vedas. And in another one, he is engaged in playing chess. I think it's described. Yeah. So Narada Muni, and also Narada Muni sees that he is engaged in meditation. He is chanting. In another palace, he is silently chanting the Gayatri mantra. And in another palace, he is engaged in meditation. And it's pulled out there. You might be familiar with this, that he's meditating on who? Or he's meditating upon, well, he's meditating upon himself. Yeah, so we shouldn't imitate that. We should meditate upon Krishna, but no doubt Krishna's meditating. We could say, yeah, it's described actually that while Krishna was in Dwarka, he is fully absorbed in feeling of separation from Sri Vrindavan Dham and the cowherd damsels, and that's mentioned here. I just read this. The Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates. I mentioned here the transcendental cowherd damsels of Raj. Yeah. So this should be enough to prove from one perspective. I remember meeting someone on Sankirtan, actually. This was many years ago. And this lady, she came from, she was of Indian origin, but she was a Christian. And she was known to the Sankirtan devotees because every time she would see the devotees, she would come up to them and she would harass them. And it's interesting that she would come and she would start to speak, she would start to criticize Krishna. But she would criticize Krishna in an interesting way. She was aware of his pastimes. So I remember one time I was doing book distribution, and she came and she started saying, that Krishna, how can you worship that Krishna? He's got 16,000 wives. And she knew about Krishna's pastimes to some extent, from an external point of view. But she was saying, how can you worship that debauchee Krishna? She's going on like this, 16,000 wives, And so in one sense, that in itself should give some indication of Krishna's being the supreme personality of Godhead. Yeah. But here, what's brought out here, that he's setting the example. Yeah. And also this is mentioned also in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in this chapter called Karma Yoga, where it's described that someone who is, that for a devotee, someone who is self-satisfied, then they actually have no duties to perform. They have no specific reason to be engaged in this world because they're fully satisfied. Yeah. They have nothing to fulfill because they have no material desires to fulfill. So in that sense, they have no reason or cause to engage in material activities. Because everything is completely dedicated. They've dedicated their lives to the Supreme Lord. But still, they will act to set the right example. And Krishna gives the example of Lord Ram's father. What's his name again? Remind me.
Dasharath.
Dasharath, thank you. Yeah. So Dasharath is given as an example of someone who actually reached perfection by engaging in his prescribed duties. Yeah. Now, those prescribed duties are done out of, they're done out of a sense of duty to Krishna. Yeah. So he fully engaged in his prescribed duties, and from that he became detached. Yeah. So he was not at all attached, but he would engage in prescribed duties in order to set the example for others to follow. And this is what Krishna is teaching here. As it's mentioned, he's the universal teacher. He is teaching how to live in this world. So he exhibited, or he performed perfectly, the duties of a householder. And even towards the end, he's showing again his natural detachment. Because that's what comes from executing our duties. Because if we execute our duties, there is going to be difficulty. That's the nature of this world. So the tendency might be to give up one specific duty. So that's why duty is very much emphasized, especially in the Mahabharata and in the Bhagavad Gita, that even if things, so it seems to become difficult, then one sticks to one's duty. You know? For the one reason, because that's what Krishna is showing an example. Yeah. Now, from that will come, because from that sense of duty, one will continue one's activities despite these sometimes trying situations. Now, from that, and this is what Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to do, because Arjuna wanted to give up his prescribed duty. It was quite clear what his prescribed duty was. It was very clear, but it became unclear to Arjuna by the arrangement of Krishna. As we know, then Arjuna became bewildered and he wanted to give up his duty. But then Krishna explains doing his duty, but in a sense of Krishna consciousness. Do it because I'm requesting it. Yeah. Do it to set the example, but ultimately to do it as I'm requesting you to actually engage in this duty. So from that, one's going to become, a sense of detachment is going to arise, a sense of wisdom. So in other words, one is not swayed by matra spasas, yeah? Matra spasas to kuntaya, by happiness and distress. Yeah. So from that will come wisdom, and from that will come realization. Will come realization and wisdom as to the ways of the world. But if we lead a whimsical life, if one gives up their duties, then one won't really develop wisdom. one won't really develop any deep knowledge. Or it could say one may not even develop in one's like a full character. One will be whimsical. Yeah? So it's important that one does one's duties. But also it goes on to describe also there in the third chapter, Karma Yoga, where he described the position of Krishna. What to speak of Krishna's devotees? Krishna himself is ever detached. He has no duty to perform in this world. He is completely transcendental. But still, he acts according to Varna and Ashram. Yeah. And then this verse, I think it's 321 or 22. Yat yat achari shastas tat tat eva tojana say pamam kurotuste locus tat on anuvatate. I think somebody might know this verse. Whatever actions performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, then the whole world pursues. Yeah. Because if Krishna reneged his duty, if Krishna didn't act according to Varna and Ashram, then others would follow in his footsteps. And then it goes on to describe there, and then there will be, it's mentioned in two places, Varna Shankara. It's also brought up there in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So the same with the devotees. For the purified devotees, they have no particular reason to engage in this world, but they engage in this world specifically to set the right example. And the same as Krishna, he engages in this world, and he shows us how to act in this world to show us to set the right example. Yeah. But then it's also we can see that sometimes Krishna's pastimes is misunderstood. This comes out in the 10th canto of the in the 10th canto, where Sukadeva Goswami, he's been describing first canto, second canto, all the cantos up to the 9th canto, and he's describing the Lord's Leela. He's describing the Lord's pastimes, especially he's describing the Lord's Rasa Leela, or his pastimes with the gopis. So Krishna has already been established as Dharmaraj, as the universal teacher. He is setting he is giving an example of how to act in this world, dharmically. But when he begins to describe Krishna's pastime with the gopis, then Maharaj Parikshit, he is a great devotee of Krishna. So for him, he understands fully the position of Krishna, and he's relishing the Krishna Katha coming from Sukadeva Goswami. But he can see there's waves of doubt which are crossing over the faces of all those, for most of those who are listening. Some of them are not devoted to Krishna. Some of them are Brahmavadis. Some of them are yogis, etc. So when they start to hear about Krishna's acting outside agupsitam, it's mentioned, the word agupsitam, that he's acting in a contradictory way, to what has just been spoken. He's acting against religion. He's acting against Dharma. How can he possibly act or be with other people's wives? So this is being so then Maharaj Parikshit asked the question. He actually asked Sukadeva Goswami. So then Sukadeva Goswami then brings out the difference between following and imitating. Yeah. So first of all, Krishna comes to set the right example as for the human beings of how to act in this world. but also he is the supreme personality of Godhead. Yeah. So we should not imitate him. Yeah. Because Krishna acts, for example, as we know, if we understand Krishna's pastimes and we study Krishna's pastimes with Mother Yasoda, with the Gopas and the Gopis, it's all a manifestation of devotion, how Krishna is reciprocating with his devotees. Yeah. And the mood there is completely selfless. It is not at all material, like the activity in the material world. So that's why Krishna's exhibiting his pastimes, very human-like pastimes, and seems to be overstepping principles of varna and ashram. Because he's showing his supreme position as the supreme personality of Godhead. So Sukadeva Goswami, he refers to he also mentions that great controllers, so powerful controllers, they are not to be judged, even though there's seems to be some audacious transgression of morality that we may see in them, because they're so powerful. And he gives example just like the sun, the sun is very powerful, and it can purify water even from an impure place. So in essence, we're supposed to follow Krishna's shiksha. We're not meant to imitate his leela. And how can we possibly imitate his leela? And then example is given where he lifts Govardhan Hill when he was a young boy. Another example is given of Lord Shiva as a powerful controller who drank poison. So if one tries to imitate Lord Shiva or Lord Krishna, actually it's described that one will, there will be severe reactions for that. There will be severe reactions for actually trying to imitate the Leela of Krishna. We should follow his shiksha. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are people in their ignorance and in their illusion where they try to imitate the pastimes of Krishna. The Prabhupada mentions that they go to hell, where they try and imitate Krishna. They do not understand Krishna's position. Yeah. So we're meant to follow Krishna's instruction. We should mention that we shouldn't even within our mind contemplate trying to imitate Krishna's pastimes. Yeah. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. So these pastimes he exhibits to show that he is completely transcendental. Yeah. So that's why it's described. Someone who understands this, Janma Kama Chame Divyam Evam Yovati Trakvata Trakvatiham Punajama Naitimam et is Sojuna. So it's not so, when it mentions there, one who understands the transcendental nature of my birth and activities does not take birth again in this material world. So one who understands Krishna's pastimes in Tattva, his pastimes in a 10th canto, in Tattva, what's actually really going on. Yeah? That person is a devotee. That person understands the Tattva of Krishna. That person, that's the qualification for actually going back to the spiritual world. And it's mentioned that one never returns again. Yeah? So that's why we have Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam describes all of Krishna's pastimes, but it is presented very carefully as well by Sukadeva Goswami. So just remember, he's speaking to an audience of mixed qualification. So therefore, Sukadeva Goswami, it's interesting because Maharaj Parikshit only has he has 7 days to live. So, and Maharaj Parikshit's a great devotee of the Lord. So why not just go to 10th canto? Why speak about creation? Why speak about the different planetary systems? Why speak about the different dynasties on Earth? You know, why speak about the atom? Why speak about time? Well, he speaks about them because all connected to Krishna. But we might see, as when devotees are leaving their body, then we're chanting the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We might not be explaining the different elements of creation. We can if it's in Bhagavatam, then it's fine. But the point here I'm bringing out is that in his 7 days, because of the audience and because Maharaj Parikshit is a great devotee of the Lord, so anything that Sukadeva Goswami is speaking is all about Krishna, actually. It's all about Krishna's creation. So in that sense, Maharaj Parikshit is relishing. And it's described that he's relishing so much that he doesn't drink or he doesn't eat. And there's a verse that describes that although not taking water is very difficult, and not eating is very difficult, it's become easy because I'm hearing the nectar coming from your lips about Krishna. It's a very nice verse that describes like that. But the point I'm bringing out here is that Maharaj Sukadeva Goswami, seeing the mixed qualification, so that seeing that as more important to educate all of those who are present, and in that sense to educate us as well. So therefore, we're also encouraged to go for the first canto, second canto, third canto, fourth canto, fifth canto, sixth canto, seventh canto, eighth canto, ninth canto, and then we come to canto 10, which describes Krishna's pastimes. And even in the beginning of this canto, as we're quoting, Sukadeva Goswami is being very, very careful. And on the request of Maharaj Parikshit, he's again explaining the tattva of Krishna. And then we have the 11th canto, which goes into great detailed philosophy as concludes the Uddhava Gita, just so we can understand the nature of Krishna's pastimes and not in any way think that we can imitate such pastimes. And I do know that we don't have a misconception. So therefore, we can read about here Krishna's pastimes in household life, and he's got 16,000 queens. So for the inquisitive mind, once we understand Krishna, we should understand that something else is going on here. He is not acting like a materialist. There is something else here. This is completely transcendental and is actually wonderful. And it's true, and it's Krishna's glorification. Yeah, Krishna has 16, we're doing well if we have one house. Some of you might have 2 houses, I don't know. But we're doing well if you get one house in this world, or you get one place to live. Isn't it? How much do we have to work just to get one place to live? Krishna's got 16,000 palaces. But we smile when we hear that, because we know Krishna's completely detached. And 16,000 palaces must mean that he's God. And 16,000 wives as well. Sometimes devotees, like how they say, taking care of one wife may be difficult, but Krishna took care of 16,000, 108 wives. And I was all fully satisfied. I was all fully happy with Krishna. So that may be, perhaps he's God. Perhaps he's a supreme personality. So these pastimes do not bewilder the devotees. They intrigue the devotees. Isn't this wonderful? And these pastimes in the 10th canto. And also Queen Kunti brings out as well the inconceivable nature of Krishna, that Krishna seems to be scared, like the moment we're celebrating Kartik, Yasoda Damodar, And this Krishna's quite bewildering because he seems to be scared of Mother Yasoda. But fear personified is scared of Krishna's holy name. Apana sam sitim go yam yam navivsogranam. But then Krishna's running. And she mentions that this is bewildering my mind. Krishna, you're the supreme controller, and you're running in fear of Mother Yasoda. So for devotees, it's like, wow, what's going on here? This is wonderful. Yeah. And he's actually crying there. It's not just crocodile tears. You know, crocodile tears, when someone's acting, they have to learn the art of crying. Actually, there's one coming to our temple at the moment in central London. Is a well-known actor. He's a young man. He's a model stroke actor, but he's becoming interested in Krishna consciousness. And you probably never heard of it, but he stars in a well-known soap thing in UK, which is called EastEnders. You know, I won't go any further to this. Thousands watch it, hundreds of thousands will watch it. And he comes to the temple quite regularly. And I sat down next to him in a lunch class one day, asked him how he's going on. He said, yeah, it's really difficult at work at the moment. So work means he's acting. He says, because I have to cry. I have to cry. And so I was asking him, oh, how'd you do it? And he's explaining the emotions he has to go through to actually make himself cry. So make himself cry. So now I forgot why I bring in that example. Why am I bringing that example? Anyone can remind me? This devotee is anyone listening attentively? No, that's it. Thank you. Krishna just reminded me. Okay, so this was so Krishna's crying. But it's not crocodile tears, because Krishna has these different potencies. There's one potency, part of his internal potency is called mukta, where he actually forgets he's God completely by the power of Yogamaya. And he's actually scared of Mother Yasoda, yeah, especially when she picks up the stick. Mother Yasoda has never picked up a stick to come and chastise Krishna. This is a stick that Mother Yasoda would keep for keeping away the monkeys, yeah, on the butter. So when she picked up the stick and she ran towards Krishna, and as we hear the wonderful translation of that bhajan, then he's crying and he's rubbing his eyes again and again. And you know, when a baby cries, when they get really into crying, then they run out of breath. So this was Krishna was crying so much, crying so hysterically that he's trying to catch his breath. And he was fully, it wasn't as if, okay, now's the pastime where Mother Yasoda is going to chase me, and now I'm going to run, and now I'm going to cry. No, Krishna was fully by the arrangement of his internal potency. Yeah. So Queen Kunti, she's meditating on this, and she's, oh, this is how can one understand Krishna? And also Krishna, who is the supreme personality of God, it is also running in so-called fear of, what's that demon, that Malecha demon who was chasing after Krishna, Kalyavana, yeah. And Krishna was running away. That's what he's called, Rancho. So he seems to be full of fear. And even he was criticized for building Dwarka. He's in fear. So therefore he's built a city in the middle of the ocean. Yeah. But but the devotees of the Lord, they know. They know the tattva, or the reasons why Krishna is exhibiting these different wonderful pastimes. Yeah. So devotees take great joy in analyzing these pastimes and understanding them. He's lifting Govardhan Hill. He's pastimes with the gopis. His pastimes with Mother Yasoda. his pastimes of rancho, running from the battle, so to speak, and his pastimes of living as a householder. So he's back to the point of setting the example. Yeah, so going back from his Leela, Krishna is also showing how to live. Yeah. And yeah. Okay, what's the time? It's 8:40. I will stop there. Any questions or comments on these points? Any
Prabhu, thank you very much for that was wonderful, the way you went through all the pastimes.
Yeah.
And I know the point of this verse was that Krishna, even though he's appearing like a householder, he was detached, and we should, not think of him as an ordinary householder. But I have been dwelling on the point of duty that you started off the class with at the very beginning. Our eternal duty is to be a servant of Krishna. That is our duty. But we take on material vows, we take on vows of marriage, or at work, whatever. How do we then navigate that? How do we, sometimes there is difficulty in figuring out, do I do this duty or do I fulfill my vows here? You take on a service, you take on a job, you take on marriage. How do we, there's conflict sometimes, and how do we manage those, or is there a order in which we should be doing it?
Well, the primary meditation that would be to, first of all, understand what's the most important thing in my life. Yes, it's important that we engage in our duties as a householder or whatever our duties may be, but over and above everything is the primariness or the swadharma, or the swadharma of the soul, is to develop one's loving affection and attachment for Krishna. So when we're going about our material life, things we accept, jobs we accept, positions we accept, or situations that we accept, it shouldn't compromise the time that we have for Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, or the time that we have for being with the devotees, or visiting the temple. If we can say that we're there, we're accepting. So really, we want to build our life around that most important principle. So you have time to chant Krishna's holy name. You have time to read Srimad Bhagavatam, and you have time to associate with the devotees of the Lord. If we find ourselves taking on this material position, this particular situation, and we're neglecting our sadhana, that means we're over collecting, or we're going where that means we're not, what we'll say, it means we're over collecting, or we're, and it's not
Grihamedis and not grihas.
Yeah. So yeah, then we become in Grihamedi instead of grihas. Now it's not easy, but the decisions we make in life should be based on this principle. Of course, I give an example, and this example is a very specific example. It may not, but there's one lady in our congregation. She was working for many years in a chemical laboratory, and she was, quite doing a job very nicely, and she got offered a higher position with a more pay. But she analyzed it, and the pay meant different hours it meant more hours, etc., which would mean she would get less time to chant the holy name before she went to work. So she refused that promotion. She said no. So that's one example. Yeah, so we want to move in this world very carefully. So we should, because it's easy to become we can get attracted to the glitter of material acquisition, even as devotees. So we want to, that main point there, we want to really make decisions based on how that situation is going to affect our spiritual practices. And if it is, we should perhaps think twice about doing that or taking on that specific engagement, because that's the most important thing in our life. Shama eva kevalam. What's the point if we get to the end of life and we haven't developed attachment to Krishna? Okay, you got a massive bank account, you've got 2 houses, you've got a detached house, you got this amount of money in the bank to relieve the children, but you have no loving affection and attraction to Krishna at the time of death. So Shama eva hi kevalam. Of course, we don't lose anything to start again in the next life. But better try and finish things up in this one life. Anyway, so did that help as an answer?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, it did. Yes,
Yeah.
it did. Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Okay, unless there's any other question out there, we can perhaps finish there.
I'd like to thank you, Murlimanohar Prabhu. That was it was very blissful listening to you tell the pastimes of Lord Krishna, especially the delivery and the context that you were giving them to us. Such a clear understanding. It's just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sometimes very complicated subjects, even just the apparent, some of the contradictions that may be apparent, Krishna acting immorally, apparently acting immorally, and how we view that, because these questions do come up in our discussions and our preaching quite often, and the way that you were able to share with us the appropriate understanding was very helpful for me.
So helpful for me as well. I was reading about that this morning. Very interesting. Anyway, thank you. So I guess we'll see each other at 10 o'clock.
In about an hour, yeah.
About an hour. Yeah. Thank you.
Are you giving the class this evening as well?
I've offered it to Nrsimha Kavacha, and he hasn't answered me yet, because I'm going to be busy catching up, because I've got a busy day today. Probably. Yeah, so I shall let you know as soon as he may answer my message.
Yeah, either one, like I said, either one is completely fine. Both, I wish we could have both of you. I wish we could have two microphones and 4 ears to hear. However it works out is perfectly fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Kontraj Shri Bhagavatam ki jai. Nandi Hari Bol.
Thank you very much for